Hello and welcome to Leroy Gaming, where today I am going to be covering with you guys a post from the Outriders Community Manager on Reddit that talks all about legendary drop rates, and I wanted to provide you with my feedback. Now, there's going to be a link to the actual Reddit post below of a full transcript on top of what you see here visually. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Let's see what he has to say, and let's see my opinion on it. The community manager, thearcan, says legendary drop rates aren't just a single digit that is bumped. Some players may think that there is just a single percentage that we are stoically refusing to nudge. It's not the case. Consider this, for example. When someone says that drop rates suck, what does that mean? You know what that may mean for you personally, but does your opinion overlay with everyone else's, with a majority, with a minority, with X percentage, with Reddit? Here's a list of things that drop rates are bad could mean, and bear in mind that every single answer would have a different improvement method. Now, I do want to point out my perspective as a YouTube streamer and an Outriders content creator. I've got over 450 hours into this game. I stream constantly. I mainly play multiplayer with two or three people at a time. So I just see a very large sampling base of what you can get loot wise, primarily playing on CT15, except for like leveling up characters. So, kind of my perspective is from somebody that spends a lot of time at the highest levels of difficulty, where technically the highest drop rates should be occurring. So, first point is, does it mean players are not getting enough drops overall? Now, drops, are they talking about legend drop? If he's talking about drops overall, there's plenty of loot. We don't need more loot dropping. We just need more potentially better loot. But let's continue on. Does it mean players are not getting enough drops in a certain location expedition? Again, it seems like there's a standardized amount of loot when it comes to expeditions. I'm going to kind of not evaluate the world drops because currently the world areas, they don't scale all the way to 50. So most people did not spend time, from what I gather, gearing up at high difficulty levels in the world. Expeditions is where we spend most of our times, from what I see, when it comes to high end farming for legendaries and so forth. So that's the perspective I'm taking here. Does it mean players are not getting enough drops at CT15? Again, if we're talking about total amount of drops, I don't think this is an issue. We get like 10 to 15 pieces of loot after a CT15 run. I don't think that's an issue. Does it mean players are not getting enough drops at CT14, 13, 12, etc.? Again, my personal opinion, I've never had anybody say, oh man, I didn't get enough blues, I didn't get enough purples, etc. So overall loot quantity, I don't think is a problem. If we get any more coconut loot, it's just going to be huge loot pinata issues like in Diablo at sometimes. The problem we have is we don't have enough inventory space. Our bags fill up really, bags, quote unquote. Our inventory fills up, and our shared stash is not nearly big enough. So it's very easy to get overflow. So again, I'm not complaining personally about total amount of loot. Does it mean players are not getting enough drops in story mode or playing in campaign? Again, I found that in every single little region when I was leveling up, you'd get a handful of items, three to five or so, sometimes two. Obviously, difficulty level will dictate rarity, etc. But I personally never felt like I wasn't getting enough loot uh, in the small percentage of time that I spend on the campaign. Does it mean players are not getting enough drops and quests? Again, I'm assuming he means rewards. Generally, you get one piece of loot. Sometimes you get a choice. I liked when they give you choices as loot rewards. I think that's a nice touch. I feel like it'd be nice if when you got legendary options, you would get choices as well. So, for example, when you get the legendary loot from the bounty hunts, etc., instead of it dumping a random legendary in your inventory, it'd be nice if we had three options, just like with every other turn in, and we choose one as an example. Does it mean players are getting enough drops, but not the items they want? Well, obviously, I think this is an RNG based like Diablo looter. It's a looter shooter, but really it's a loot lottery game. So you're pulling that lever every time, and you have certain percentages of certain drops dropping. So you're just rolling on a bunch of loot tables. If we got everything we would want, that's not possible because the game can't read our minds. It doesn't know what we're looking for. Maybe we're going for an unorthodox build, etc. So that element is very subjective. Um, I feel like for everybody. Does this mean players are getting too much armor, too few weapons, or vice versa? I find there's a personally a pretty good balance. You know, when I look at my armor and weapons, I don't think I've ever had like the thought of like, man, I'm getting way too many weapons or way too many armors. Now, if I'm farming for a specific weapon or trying to, or armor, that may come to mind. But overall, I feel like it's a pretty good balance. It's just not something that comes to the forefront as far as my concerns go. All right, let's see here. Um, Does it mean players are getting enough drops? But no, okay. Does it mean players are getting enough drops, but not the items they want in the location they're farming? Well, yes. And I think something they need to be really transparent about, or should be transparent about, is letting us know if there really is anything like targeted farming. I don't think there is in this game. I don't think they thought that far. They didn't spend the resources to reallocate because that again adds more complexities. Even though there's a lot of YouTubers that are trying to prove it, I have yet to see a single source that sells me on it. I do believe this game, again, there are some basic elements because the way it was created, from everything I gather, it's just one giant loot pool. There are different rarity chances for it to drop each item, and it does change depending on what difficulty you're playing on. That's the only thing I have surely seen proof of. And obviously, certain items are much less or more common, just as he'll mention here, as far as the meme of the cannonball set being way more common than anything else when it comes to legendary sets. Does it mean players are getting the same item over and over again? Cannonball, here we go. For example, I mean, again, this just is an RNG. If the cannonball set drops, let's say 10% of the time, every other set drops between 1 and 2% of the time, you're obviously going to get way more of the common sets. I don't think there's any way around it. Every looter shooter or just looter like Diablo game, anything around looting, you're going to have certain items and sets that are common. This is what makes the rare and super rare items so special, so valuable, because they are rare. If they dropped like candies, uh, it wouldn't matter. Imagine if you had a million of the rarest items and then the really crappy items never dropped. I mean, that might sound like, oh, cool. I don't want the crappy items to drop, but that's not the point. I do believe they intended to have a discrepancy between what items are really good, what items are really, really powerful. And I do believe they did adjust the rarities for that. Now, do I personally think that some of the rare items are too rare? Yes. And that could be a whole nother deeper subject talk. Does it mean players can't seem to find one particular item? Yeah. When you're looking for something, it's going to stand out. So I like to use this analogy. Have you ever gotten a new car and then you're driving on the road and all of a sudden all you see on the road is that car? This doesn't mean that all of a sudden everybody bought that car, but our brains are so aware of that item now that we pay attention to it. Well, kind of the reverse happens as well in our brains when we're really focusing on obsessing about getting a certain item. That's all we look for, and we don't see it, we get frustrated. And it even makes it even worse. If you were just randomly killing stuff, not caring what we get, we wouldn't stress out that we're not getting that one item because it's not kind of on our radar. And then we get it and we're like, cool, whatever. And not even that big of a deal because you aren't looking for it. So, whatever you're looking for, if you have it, you're going to probably start noticing how everybody else has it. And when you don't have it, it's going to be even worse because you're not going to see it anywhere and you'll probably be irritated that other people have it. This happens all the time. And is that one single item universally difficult to find or for the reporting player in question? So again, there is the actual statistical drop rates in RNG, and then for that particular person. Now, I think the big question is here is how much does that person play? To give you a perspective, I have gotten every single legendary weapon in the game numerous times, except for the high roller. I have played 450 hours, and I would say probably about 400 plus, 400 to 410 of it has been farming CT15s. That's a good amount of hours. So I've gotten like 3 or 4 enamoys. I've gotten 2 or 3 death shields. But again, over 400 hours. That's still really, really rare. And I have personally not gotten a single high roller. Yet people in my Discord at Leroy Gaming have told me, "Oh, yeah, I've got 2 of them." Not everybody, most people don't, but there are some people that have numerous. Um, so were they just lucky? Probably. Is that probably a really, really rare gun? I'm guessing yes. Do I maybe think it's the rarest gun from what I'm saying? It might very well be, but it's probably up there with some of those other elite weapons. So this is me at 400 hours. But if somebody's played, let's say 30 hours, 30 average player, 30 hours is a good amount of time to spend on a game, right? It's for the average individual. So they may feel like, oh man, I spent 25 hours farming and I haven't got it. They may get frustrated. So if you compare them to me, my frustration potentially after 400 hours is way different than at 25 hours. Also, when I made my legendary weapon video, a couple of people said, like, man, how did you get all those weapons? Are you hacking? I'm like, no, I've played 400 plus hours. If you play 400 hours, I will pretty much guarantee you'll have multiples of pretty much every gun in the game, and chances are you'll probably have better luck than me. You'll probably have one of everything. Again, I'm missing one weapon. It just happens to be that weapon. In fact, when I made that video, one of my uh, members on the Discord sent me footage, and I used it. So to help me out with that, because I didn't want to pull something off the internet or outdated information. I wanted some live feed information for that weapon and all the weapons, so you knew I was showing you the most updated information. And again, that was a perfect example of kind of the random levels of this loot, and also different people's experiences. And then, does it mean uh, encountering droughts every now and again, or the drop rate is always bad? Now, again, I think at the end of the day, there are just some weapons that are going to be super, super rare. My problem is one that is not mentioned here. My problem when it comes to legendary loots is how bad it feels when you clear something that is the most difficult content in the game, meaning expeditions at CT15, and you are not rewarded with a single legendary. That feels really, really bad. Because remember, to get that super rare legendary, not only does a legendary have to drop, then you have to roll on the right table, weapon, for example, as opposed to armor. Then you gotta roll the correct item, which could be super rare as well. So at the very least, the one thing I recommend is, and I hope they do, is make it so if you're doing a CT15, at least one of those 4 items are a guaranteed legendary, and maybe you can get more, but that would fix it a lot. On the stream the other night, we ran our first 3 runs, 3 players, CT15. And again, I don't know if loot scales based how many people are running it. It doesn't look like it does. It seems like the chance of legendary is the same whether it's 1 player, 2 player, 3 player. Other games like Diablo 3 in the past made it that you got more chances of better loot if you were playing in a group. This game doesn't appear to do that from what I'm gathering. But again, 3 runs in a row, no legendaries. It felt really, really bad, really bad. And they don't need to do that. It's not like it's so easy to get the loot you're looking for that we're gonna be, overrun with legendaries. If they increase the drop rate to where you get 1 guaranteed legendary for the hardest content in the game at the highest difficulty. And by the way, to get gold, we're talking about gold here as well. So maybe if it's silver, it's 75% chance for that first one. But if you're getting gold times on CT15 on expeditions, you definitely should be at least getting 1 legendary. Just my opinion. So finishing up here, I've seen arguments for pretty much every single one of these individual questions, and many players have very specific opinions on each of them. And in the very thread, you have, I'm not going to pronounce that name, Vogush, blah, blah, says that CT15 drop rates aren't good enough. You also have this other guy saying that drop rates are fine, but what drops is not. In other threads, you have players saying the legendary drops like candy for them at CT15. Again, I'd love to see these actual opinions. Now, loot, yeah, there's tons of loot, but are you getting legendaries like candy? My definition of getting legendary drops like candy would be an average of 2 to 3 a run. If there's a 25% chance times 4, If each one of those, we're dropping really at a 50% rate, which means you would average two theoretically per run. That would be maybe a little too lucrative. It'd be nice as every time you get at least one, and maybe half the time you would get two, maybe a tenth of the time you would get three, and then 5% of the time you would be getting you would be getting you know four, or even less than 5%, but you get the idea. So in Solo Thread's Cannonball set has become a meme because of its high drop rate compared to other items. Some, perhaps many, of these complaints can be alleviated with a better understanding of the system. Other complaints may require a drop rate buff, but before we get to that, we want to understand which systems are okay uh, with a proper understanding thereof versus what the other generals need reworking. Also, aware of request suggestions for Tiago to rotate his shop, and I could help alleviate some of the problems. However, this, much like other great suggestions for quality of life improvements such as transmog, require a lot of design and reviewing of the overall drop design and coding to implement. I'm not saying it's impossible. It's not something that can be done at the drop of the hat at this point in time. So I want to point out this is not a live service game. I almost guarantee you a large percentage of the developers that made the game have either moved on to other projects, or maybe if they are going to DLC, they're reallocating to DLC. I'm guessing the patching team, maybe it was elevated higher than normal for the critical bugs, but for these kind of improvements, I'm going to take a wild guess. It's not a huge team. If this was a live service plan game, that would be totally different. I feel like we need to have realistic expectations for a non live service game, even though it kind of feels like one still. So just to wrap it up, many players can be unhappy with the drop rates at the as this monolith idea. But why they're unhappy can be down to a multitude of issues, and a multitude of issues require bespoke tweets. So it's a post that brings up interesting ideas. The mod themselves, the community didn't really specify their opinions, but they're initiating conversation. I'd love to hear what you think in the comments below. Let's keep it civil. If you don't know my channel here, I like to focus on the positive, even when I'm not happy about something. I'm not here to slander. I'm not here to bash this company. Definitely not this poor moderator. There's been other games where people just absolutely destroy these community managers, where I feel like they're going to need therapy. Please don't do that. I beg of you. These are human beings. They care. And I feel like a lot of times when they get this negative backlash, they just kind of curl up in a fetal position and stop posting. So, anyways, guys, this is Leroy from Leroy Gaming. If you listened this far, if you enjoyed this comment, like, subscribe. Make sure you hit that notification bell to be notified whenever a new video is dropping. And make sure to check out the stream on Twitch, twitch.tv, Leroy Gaming stream 6 nights a week. We got our this Saturday big 24-hour stream to celebrate 2,400 and growing subscribers on YouTube. Thank you, thank you, thank you. See you next video. Leroy from Leroy Gaming out.